language awareness, phonology, intonation. For this input, you'll be asked to do a couple of activities with a partner or group, so best that you are all together for this one, or at the very least with your partner. So let's start with a little lead-in activity. With your partner, decide who is A and who is B, and act out this little dialogue. Go! Now, say the dialogue again, but this time with these different scenarios in mind. I'm going to list a couple now. After I say each one, pause the video and do the dialogue again. First scenario. A and B are old friends. They meet at a party after 3 years of not seeing each other. Go. Second scenario. A and B are colleagues at an office. It is 8 a.m. on Monday, and they meet in the lift. Go. Third scenario. A and B are colleagues. They meet at the bar. B has found out that A has been speaking behind his or her back, saying terrible things. A doesn't know this and is trying to be friendly. Go. What do you notice about how what you say has changed? You're each saying exactly the same word, but suddenly the meaning is very different. How do you account for the differences? Pause the video and discuss this quickly with your partner or group. Go. So you'll have noticed that your intonation would have been very different depending on the scenario. So, what exactly is intonation? Think about what just happened with the role-play task you did earlier, and with your partner, try to answer questions 1A, B, and C on your task sheet now. Pause the video and restart it once you have discussed this and made some notes. Intonation can be defined as the rise and fall in our tone, and the emphasis placed on different words to express meaning and attitude. If you like, the rise and fall of our tone can be compared to the melody of a song, whereas the stress we give certain words in a sentence can be likened to the rhythm. Intonation provides extra meaning in speech beyond the meanings of the words themselves. Adding to this are differences in body language or facial expressions, which accompany intonation to provide the listener with clues as to the actual intent of the speaker behind the words. So, why teach it? Hopefully this will become clear over the course of this input. Context. What features come to mind? So for this, think of the features of context that affect intonation. Think about what we asked you to do with the first lead-in exercise. What exactly affected the way you said hi to each other? Discuss this with your partner and try to answer question 2. Pause the video and restart it when ready. The visual on the screen should have provided you with clues. How you speak can be determined by contextual features such as who is speaking to whom, their relationship, when they are speaking, where they are speaking, what they are speaking about, the history between the two speakers, their expectations, etc. The way you say good morning to someone you don't know versus someone you know very well is likely to be different. And it will also be different depending on where you are, what time of the morning it is, and your mood at the time of saying it. Context is important because it will affect not only what we say, but also how we say it. Now, think of a context in which you might say the words, "I like you." Write it down on your task sheet and say, I like you, to your partner with that context in mind. Can your partner guess the meaning behind it? Pause the video and do this now. So before we teach intonation, we need to provide a clear context to our learners, because this will give further meaning to what we say beyond the words used. This gives our learners many clues to meaning that can be very difficult to explain in class. Let's look at another example. If someone tells you, I'm going to Thailand next week, you could respond with the words, how nice. This can seem enthusiastic. How nice! Sarcastic. How nice. Indifferent. How nice. Maybe jealous. How nice. So our intonation actually conveys our attitude beyond the meanings of the words spoken. You'll find that a narrow pitch range often denotes boredom, anger, or sullenness, or it can express confidence and control, whereas a wide pitch range can denote excitement or interest. Have a go at this following task. How would you say the following? How does the way you say it change the meaning? And what exactly is the change? With your partner, think of various ways of saying the pairs of sentences and indicate the mood of the different possible messages being conveyed. What are all the different meanings that can be expressed by varying your intonation? Pause the video and try this now. There are different common pitch directions in English: fall, rise, and rise, fall. At this stage, we are only going to concentrate on falling or rising intonation, and this is related to grammar and functions. For the 10 sentences, decide whether their intonation rises or falls at the end of each one, and what kind of sentence it is, grammatically or functionally speaking. Pause the video now and work with your partner or partners to decide which of the 10 rise or fall. When you have finished, continue playing the video. So here are the answers. Look at the statements that fall and the ones that rise. What general rules can you draw from this? Pause the video again and see what conclusions you can draw. To sum up, voice pitch can move in 2 directions, up or down, or rise or fall. The study of intonation is a complex and strongly contested area. But from the wealth of materials written about intonation and its function in English, we can extract only very general principles which are relevant to classroom practice. So, it is possible to formulate some general rules about the relationship between intonation and neutral grammatical constructions. So, generally, WH questions fall, as you can see from examples 2, 4, and 10. Yes or no questions tend to rise, as you can see from 3, 5, 8, and 9. Statements generally fall, as you can see from 1, 6, and 7. So, this is a good rule of thumb to remember. Common intonation patterns for yes-no questions: rising. Have you got a car? The common intonation pattern for WH questions: generally falling. What's your name? Intonation patterns that we find in statements are generally falling. I bought a new jacket yesterday. You may have found, though, that your ideas were slightly different from these. And this is because of the following, possibly. Attitude and emotion can affect these intonation patterns. So for the question, "What's your name?", which is usually falling, you can adopt a different intonation. "What's your name?" The meaning behind this could be, "You told me once before, but I forgot and I need you to remind me." So consider the differences in intonation between asking for the first time versus asking for a reminder. Here's another example. A general question could be, "How many sugars do you take?" But you could have a different meaning behind this. "How many sugars do you take?" Meaning, "I think you take 2, but I can't remember." But upon hearing the answer, 6, you could then say, "How many sugars do you take?" Meaning, you can't be serious. Note the rising intonation in both, but also the stress on the how in the second example. And here's another one. The general way to ask this question would probably be, "You'll come, won't you?" Note the usual rising intonation in this example. However, if you're pretty sure the answer is going to be yes, you're going to ask this question merely looking for confirmation, and therefore you might actually say, "You'll come, won't you?" Note the falling intonation, because in reality, you're actually making a statement rather than asking a genuine question. For tag questions, these could rise or fall depending on the intent of the speaker. You could ask the question on the slide in one of two ways. "You've met my wife, haven't you?" Which is a genuine question, as in, "I'm not sure if you have or not," versus, "You've met my wife, haven't you?" where you're pretty sure they have met. Another common intonation pattern is when you're listing items. If you very quickly pause the video and play this game. This is also a good game to play with your learners to practice vocabulary. You start by saying, "I went to the market and I bought a dress." The next person in your group says the same sentence, but adds another item to the list. Play this for several rounds and see what happens to your intonation patterns as you list the items. Pause the video and do this now. So you probably found that as you were listing the items, your intonation pattern went rise, 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 and fell on the final item. For example, "I went to the market and I bought a dress, a bag, some shoes, and a wallet." So to sum up again, the common intonation pattern for tag questions is rising if it's a genuine question, "You've met my wife, haven't you?" versus falling if you're merely confirming known information. "You've met my wife, haven't you?" The common intonation pattern when listing items is usually rise, 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 and fall on the last item. This is because the rising intonation when listing items indicates to the listener that the speaker is not yet finished, but the final falling tone on the last item indicates that they have finished speaking. Intonation, together with pausing, can also give vital clues as to the meaning. As you can see from the slide, the pairs of sentences can take on different meanings depending on where you pause and what intonation you use. For example, Alfred said, "The boss is stupid," versus, "Alfred," said the boss, is stupid. This is useful for our learners to understand, because it's very easy for what you say to be misconstrued if the wrong intonation is used or if there is a pause in the wrong place. So, how can we raise awareness of intonation in our classroom? There are many ways, as you can see here. Take note of these on your task sheet. So one thing we can do is get our learners to recognize and record visually any aspects of intonation they might hear. You can do tasks in class which ask the learners to identify stress in sentences and to recognize the rises and falls in any utterances they hear. This can be recorded on the whiteboard using arrows and stress symbols. This can be used with any listening the learners are doing in class. A section of the text can be written on the whiteboard, and learners can try to add where they think the symbols should go. Paying regular attention to intonation. This can be a very natural and common part of your lesson. Commend and praise learners on the sound of their voice, giving special praise for language that sounds natural. When you drill extended chunks of language, not just individual words, and get the learners to mimic the intonation pattern. You can rehearse useful expressions. Have a range of expressions you use with significant intonation patterns. Give the learners socially useful expressions and practice how to say them in class. Examples could be, "Nice to see you again," or "Please may I go to the bathroom?" You can encourage your learners to mimic what they hear on any given audio sample. Also ensure that you do practice drilling. This goes a long way to establishing good sound patterns. Identifying voice mood is also a very good activity to help raise awareness of intonation. When you play an audio for a listening task, ask the learners, "What is he or she like?" Or, "How are they feeling?" See if the learners can identify whether the speaker is happy, sad, interesting or interested, boring or bored, friendly, aggressive, annoyed, cooperative, etc. To help them improve their own aspects of intonation, get learners to analyze recordings of themselves or their peers. They can record their voice on their phones and analyze how they sound. Are their intonation patterns natural and appropriate? Then get them to re-record and improve their sound so they can sound more natural. Exaggerate intonation. To make the patterns really obvious, really exaggerate in your models when drilling. Normalize it when they are able to approximate the pattern. You can practice stressing a significant content word in a sentence. On the previous input, you would have looked at word and sentence stress. Have a look at the exercise on contrastive stress. A fun one to try is practicing putting stress on all the different words in a sentence and working out all the different meanings. A fun example is the sentence, "I didn't say we should kill him." Note that there are 7 words in that sentence. You could say that same sentence 7 times, but each time, with one different word stressed, you could come up with 7 different meanings. How would you say this sentence if the message you wanted to convey was, "It wasn't me that told you to kill him," versus, "You killed the wrong person," versus, "You were only meant to break his legs," versus, "I didn't explicitly give a verbal command, I merely implied it." You could also back chain to demonstrate. So for this, while you're drilling, you start with the last word in an utterance and drill this. then the last two sounds and drill, then 3, and so on till you have the whole utterance and pattern. Sometimes, starting from the end allows learners to more easily copy the pattern. For example, let's take that sentence, I didn't say we should kill him. If you were to backchain this, you would start with kill him, should kill him, we should kill him, say we should kill him, I didn't say we should kill him, getting the learners to practice each part of the utterance until they're saying the whole thing. You can demonstrate in other ways, which are more physical and visual. So you can highlight intonation by humming or moving your hand or your whole body up and down with the sound pattern. So to sum up, let's recap what we covered. What is intonation? Intonation is the pattern of prominence and tone in speech. These can be compared to rhythm and melody in music, the rise and fall in tone, and emphasis placed on different words to express meaning. When we talk about prominence, this is the emphasis given to particular words in speech to highlight them as important. For example, in contrastive stress, prominence is given to a word which contrasts with one that went before. Tone is the melody of speech, the rising and fall of our pitch. What does intonation do? It adds an extra level of meaning to what is said beyond the words. Speakers can alter their intonation pattern to change the function in questions and statements. A tag question, Madras is in India, isn't it? May have a rising or falling tone. A rising tone makes it sound as if the speaker is not very sure that Madras is in India, so that it is a genuine question. A falling tone makes it sound as if the speaker is fairly sure that Madras is in India and merely wants confirmation. It can show attitude and adds meaning, for example, boredom, interest, uncertainty, etc. Intonation can be used to make "how nice" sound enthusiastic or sarcastic. Misunderstandings can arise from text in email or text messages because of this absence of intonation. This is often remedied by using emoticons. And finally, why teach intonation? English has a wider voice range than many languages. Without the appropriate intonation, our learners run the risk of sounding rude or bored or aggressive. Intonation errors can also cause irritation to the native speaker, especially if compounded by grammatical errors. This can lead to misinterpretation. At a beginner level, it's useful to teach intonation to our learners as a vehicle for social appropriacy. This is the end of the Phonology Intonation input. Look back at your notes and highlight any areas that you're not sure of or wish to discuss. We'll see you at the next OT. Thanks for watching.